We'll go ahead and get started. Welcome to all of you, everyone on the Zoom call and those here in Meadows Hall in the Green Center. Welcome to the third installment of the CEO Roundtable and the first hybrid format. So appreciate your willingness to join us wherever you are. As I said, we've got folks in person and we've got people from all around the globe joining us online. So thank you. My name is Brian Winkelbauer. I'm the CEO of the Minds Foundation. And it's my pleasure to introduce our panelists today. This program is hosted by the foundation in partnership with campus partners like the Career Center, academic departments, faculty, and student clubs and organizations. And we are proud to bring esteemed alumni, executive leaders to campus so we can all benefit from their leadership journey and learn how Minds has impacted their trajectory and learn about their experience and how it can bring value to the Minds community in a broad way. So I'd like to introduce Andrea and Chris, and they'll walk us through their paths to becoming business leaders and hopefully learn more about how you all can make the most of your Minds degree. So first, I'll introduce Andrea Wescott Passman. Andrea joined Caris in 2019 as Chief Operating Officer. Prior to joining Caris, Ms. Passman was the Senior Vice President of Engineering and Operations for CNX Resources, where she led operations and engineering for their Appalachian assets. She also led exploration and evaluation of shale plays for CNX's international subsidiary. Ms. Passman has concentrated her career in optimization and digitization of unconventional resource plays for the last decade, holding management and engineering roles with Halliburton, Schlumberger, and U.S. Independence. Ms. Passman was raised in a gold mine in Alaska and still holds that new frontier attitude. She was recruited away from Alaska by the Colorado School of Mines, where she received her Bachelor of Science degree in petroleum engineering. In addition, she holds a Master of Business Administration degree from the University of Denver. Ms. Passman is on the Colorado School of Mines Petroleum Engineering Advisory Board, serves as the University of Denver's Diamond Jubilee Chairperson, and is on the Food Bank of the Rockies Operations Committee. Welcome, Andrea.
Thank you.
Our other panelist is Chris Staples. Chris is the Chief Executive Officer of G2o Technologies, North America's leading provider of specialty water treatment chemicals, and President and Managing Partner at Bespoke Advisors. Christine has spent her career in the chemical, water, and energy markets, and she excels at implementing growth strategies that transform commodity companies into modern, digitally driven brands. She currently leads G2o Technologies, a PE-backed company where she is driving the organization through a period of growth and market expansion. Prior to G2o Technologies, Chris served as the Executive Vice President of the Water Division at Buckman International and worked for over 20 years at Ecolab, where she held increasingly complex global leadership positions in both the water and energy industries. Her Ecolab roles included sales, supply chain, marketing, strategic planning, and leadership of regional and global business units. She holds a Master of Science in Geochemistry from Colorado School of Mines, an MBA from the University of Denver, and a Bachelor's of Science degree from Michigan State University. Chris is a passionate supporter of women in mining and STEM, including providing leadership for the American Heart Association's Bring STEM to Life initiative. She has volunteered with the American Heart Association, Heifer International, United Way Worldwide, Goodwill Industries, and Kappa Alpha Theta. Chris lives in Littleton with her husband of 23 years, who's here today, Nick Hatfield, who also got his degree in 1996. Her 3 children and 3 dogs. She enjoys living the Colorado lifestyle, hiking, skiing, and biking throughout the West. Welcome, Chris. Moderator today is Minds President Paul Johnson. Thank you, Paul, and welcome.
Thank you, Brian, and thanks everyone for being here. Whether you're here in person or you're online, we're very excited to have you here. We're excited to have these two great panelists with us. I thought I'd just take a moment and just sort of mention why we're doing these CEO Roundtable series, and then we'll get into it. You know, when we started our strategic planning a few years ago, we got a lot of input from our alums and from companies who hire our students and things like that. And we pretty consistently got feedback that was, you know, your students are incredible from a technical standpoint. They're you know, they can run circles around anybody else when it comes to technical aspect of things. If you wanted to make them like even better, what you really ought to do is increase business acumen and look for opportunities for leadership development. So, and I don't know if you two would agree with that or not, but that was pretty consistent feedback. So we took that to heart, and we've added a lot of things to our campus and to student experience to help develop more opportunities for leadership development, as well as developing business acumen. So when you go out in the work world, you're better prepared, and you're even more valuable as an asset to companies, and perhaps even you might have a quicker trajectory or more opportunities available for you as well. So that's really why we're doing this. There are a whole lot of other things that we're doing related to professional development here at Mines, including our new Pascal Center and our VIP program, and the Career Center helps with all these things as well. But we thought we would take advantage of the fact that so many Mines alums have ascended to senior leadership positions in big companies, sometimes in their own companies that they start as entrepreneurs. And we would really be losing a great opportunity if we didn't talk to them and learn from all of them. So that's really the background behind what we're doing here. We always thought that connecting our alums to our current students as well as to other alumni would be one of the best things that we could do here at Mines, because that is such a rich asset for the university. So with that, we're going to start off with each of our panelists is going to tell you a little bit more about themselves, more than what Brian just read about them, and then we'll have a Q&A time period as well. If you're online and you're watching us, you'll have an opportunity to submit questions via the chat function, and we'll be monitoring those and bring those into the discussion. So I don't know if you two, we forgot to flip a coin before we started. Chris said, there we go.
Because you trumped me because of being born and raised in a gold mine in Alaska. Got it.
That was an excellent preemptive move.
It was awesome. We coordinated this.
So Chris, would you like to start off?
Yeah, I guess I'll explain a little bit about my journey, and I think we're going to do the same thing, kind of leaving Mines and ending up where we are today. So I'll storytell. I storytell a lot, so I'll storytell about my career. And it has kind of three main chunks. Started out doing kind of really practical work post Mines in an engineering consulting company, moved to a really big publicly traded company, and then downsized into privately held companies, and then into a private equity backed company. So I'll kind of explain that journey. And it goes from really an individual contributor to a manager to a leader. And I'm really passionate about that process and developing people through that process. So you hear that as we're talking. Really developing leaders in whatever their functional area is. So after I left Mines, I did what was pretty typical. I went into an environmental consulting company, and I worked at an abandoned uranium mill and mine in Wyoming, doing design work on groundwater remediation systems, clean up the water that was heading towards the river in 20 years. And I was working with some Mines grads, a woman named Nadia Miller and I worked together at the time, and her husband's a professor here. And I've still kept in touch with her. And so Nadia and I worked on this, and I loved it. I loved the field work. I loved being outside. I loved kind of the problem solving of the field. And then I went back to the office, and I kind of really didn't like that so much. And I didn't like looking at the computer. I didn't like doing the modeling. I didn't like doing that work, even though that's what I did during my master's degree. And I had this, I'd come home, and Nick and I were engaged, and I'd come home and I'd just not really get a lot of satisfaction out of my day. And he bet me $100 at the time. Our combined income, I think, was $65,000. So at the time, $100 was a lot of money. He said, go find another job. So I thought, all right, well, competitive, I'll take my $100. And I went out and just put my name out there, called a friend of a friend, found a recruiter, and ended up at this company called Nelco, which is owned by Ecolab. When we went to the cafeteria today, there was a hand sanitizer. It said Ecolab. It's the company I worked for 20 years. And Ecolab is about clean, about safe, about water, about energy. A big company, $12 billion, 45,000 employees. So I really went from engineering into a big company. And I think one of the things I learned that is great to share is that I kind of thought I'd sit down with a manager and they'd tell me what to do to make my career successful. And I realized that it's a do-it-yourself. I just called it a do-it-yourself career. I knew I wanted to run a business, but I didn't know how to get there. I started out as an entry-level engineer, had no idea how to communicate with people. I'm outgoing, but I wasn't as much then. And so I did a DIY career move, and I kind of laid out what I thought I needed to do. And at the time, I realized that I was in a kind of a field engineering, field sales position, and I was combining technology and the technical attributes of my education with business, but I didn't even know what business meant, right? I didn't know how to sell. I didn't know what business meant. And so I went and got an MBA at DU. And it really, at that point, it pivoted my career. And I started realizing if I wanted to do it myself, my career, I needed to kind of learn all these different attributes of how business functions. And that's why when you hear all these different roles I've had, it was that I was kind of walking a P&L or an income statement from the top to the bottom. And I figured I needed to learn everything down the income statement. I don't know if I really needed to learn all the attributes to get to my role, but that's what I did. Started out in sales, marketing, moved into the supply chain so I could understand cost of goods, right? How much does it cost to make a product and get it to the customer? And then I moved into support functions, all kinds of different marketing functions, and started to work all around the world. And Andrea and I have had these conversations about where we worked and some of these stories of where we've worked. I've worked all over the world. I've done work in Argentina, Brazil, Colombia, South Africa. Didn't know anything about South Africa, but I'll tell you, those are the hardest working, most fascinating people. Done several deals in China with party companies, so I had to learn how to work within a party organization, all over Europe. So I've worked all over the world, and I think about this and I'm saying this, and I'm looking at my husband and I'm like, and I had 3 kids while we were doing this, so there's a lot of juggling that was happening. And ended up during this period and during this time at Ecolab, I held 18 different jobs because I thought I was bouncing around to learn all these different areas. And Andrea and I have a difference of opinion about a couple of things that we've talked about, but I held 18 different jobs because I wanted to learn how to run a business, and I thought that's the way to do it. So bounced around, ended up in the upstream energy division, moved back to Denver. I'd moved to Chicago, moved back to Denver, and ended up running 4 businesses, a profit center, and then 3 independent businesses that were all by themselves. So meaning I had a full P&L, which is unusual in a big company, and did that for a few years. One was a joint venture, so I figured out how a joint venture functions. One was a standalone business, and then one was a fairly sizable acquisition. Ran all these businesses and realized that in order for me to get to the top seat, which is really what I realized I wanted, I needed to down select. So I went into a privately held company, a family-owned company, completely different day and night from a large publicly traded company. Went to a privately held company, spent a year there, really learned a lot about corporate culture and the importance of culture and cultural fit as you're going through your career. And I tell this story. I got a phone call from a friend who was the CEO, and he said, I need some help. Can you help me? And I said, no, I got a job. I don't have time to help you. And he goes, quit your job and come help me because I really need help. It's like, okay. So I did, and I started a consulting company, and I got other calls from other friends of mine that were CEOs and said, hey, I need some help. And I was like, what is going on? And so I started this kind of little boutique consulting company working directly with CEOs of small businesses, chemical industry, and realized working with these guys that I could completely and totally do that job. Like I didn't necessarily have the confidence that I could sit in the top seat. And So I put my name out there and ended up where I am today, running G2o Technologies. And it's a water treatment company. And I think when you hear me speak, you'll hear the passion in my voice about what I do, about water. 71% of the world is covered in water. It is shockingly simple and amazingly complex at the same time. It's stressed. It is used for municipal, agricultural applications, industrial applications. It is so integral in what Mines teaches. I just love water, and it sounds really funny to say that. And so what my company does, we have chemical facilities across the United States. We produce chemicals to clean water. I asked my marketing guy for some of the statistics, and I was like, damn, this is cool. We provide chemicals every day to treat 13 billion gallons of water to make it clean for human and industrial consumption. Every 15 minutes, so we can start our timer, I'm shipping a truckload of chemical out to a municipal user for drinking water, to an industrial user. We have thousands of customers around the United States. We're private equity backed, we make money. And I just truly love it. I love the approach. I love the strategy of what we're doing. And I love the opportunity of taking all these different pieces of my career and putting them together to run a business and drive a culture. And, it's all about performance and results and leading a team and talent development. And it's all these things that I've been doing for 20 years and get to sit in the seat and do it. And we've been very successful so far. It's a brand new company. We're driving culture and I love it. When I think about how I got here and how Mines got me here, it was really interesting over the last week to really think about this. And I'll put it in a nutshell with a little story at the back end. I came to Mines because I wanted to write a thesis. I wanted to do some original research and I wanted to write a thesis. And there were very few places where you could write a thesis in a master's program. So I came here so that I could do it because I really wanted to understand the ability to problem solve, to use data, to answer questions that didn't have an answer or a clear answer. So I came to Mines and it was really kind of a pivotal move for me. I really believe. I got a lot of respect. I love this school. It helped me put together facts and information to solve problems. And it seems really rudimentary, but when you think about it, a lot of education, undergraduate education, is about learning how you get a problem and you solve it, but there's an answer to it. And when you're doing like even somewhat original research, there's not necessarily a clear answer. So that ability to problem solve, I learned at Mines. And how to use data to solve problems, I learned at Mines. My thesis advisor was Dr. Wendy Harrison, and I would say that she might not agree with me when I say this, but at Mines I learned how to write succinctly and how to write so that it could be absorbed without a lot of fluff and a lot of extra words. I learned how to write here. Got better at it at DU. I don't know if you agree with that, but DU really helped me really succinctly learn how to write. Something else that I really learned at Mines, and it might seem really fuzzy relative to an engineering education, is I was a teaching assistant and I learned how to teach. And if I think about the best leaders that are out there, they are those who coach and develop the next generation of leaders. And Mines taught me how to teach as a teaching assistant. My husband and I joke all the time that I was his teaching assistant. We're not quite sure. We decided today that yes, in fact, I was his teaching assistant. But that ability to be a player coach is a really integral part of leadership. And Mines taught me that. And then the thing that I'll close with, a little story that I have never forgotten, is at the end of my research, I had a question. And I walked into Wendy's office and I said, I've got a question for you. And I'm trying to remember what it was. And I think it was something related to hydrate diffusion coefficients. I mean, something really specific and really technical. And she looked at me and she kind of pursed her lips, squinted her eyes, and she had a British accent. She was very intimidating. And she said, figure it out yourself. I was like, okay. She just looked, that's all she said. And I kind of backed away. And I realized that is, if you think about in the business world, and you think about engineering, this idea of figure it out yourself is really important. Solve the problem. You can always take it up the food chain. You can always discuss it with others, but the idea of figure it out yourself before you go ask for help was a really pivotal learning moment for me at Minds. And now I don't always figure things out myself. I've got subject matter experts that I go to, but the idea of first think through the solution to the problem yourself was really probably one of the things I learned at Minds more than anything else. And it has stayed with me. That conversation and backing out of her office wasn't a conversation. 3 or 4 words, was really pivotal for me. And that's one of the things I remember about Minds is solve the problem yourself. You were educated, figure it out. So, you know, this idea of do it yourself, your own career, figure it out yourself, right? Test and try different things that you like. I learned at Minds. So it's kind of my little bit of my story and my background and what Minds taught me, which I'm really proud to say I'm an alumni.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing that. And I know I suspect there'll be a lot of questions about many of the things that you brought up. And the next time I see Wendy, I'm gonna mention this.
And if you tell her that I learned to write, she'd shake her head.
She might
because-
disagree.
Oh, you should. Yeah, it was pretty red. My first draft of my thesis had a lot. I think she didn't get all the way through it and said, just go and fix this. Keep working.
No Grammarly back then.
Oh, no Grammarly back then. I was like practically on a typewriter. So yeah.
I can almost picture Wendy doing that. So that's a great story. So thanks for sharing that. And I think that the way that you tied that all together through a story was fantastic. We'll be after you with questions in a few minutes. So Andrea.
I think what's great about what Chris talked about, we have a lot of similarities in our stories, but we also have a lot of differences in our stories as well. And her notion of do it yourself and the path that you create to get to wherever you want to go, whether it's the top or whether it's the top of your technical game, everyone has a different path. And you know, I think about that and we have a lot of similarities, but we do have differences too. I too have a DU MBA, right? Like, and she and I found that really quickly when we first met 4 days ago, which now we're calling 4 years ago because it feels like we've known each other that long. But I think from my intro, I grew up in Alaska. So I grew up in Fairbanks, Alaska, on the land that my grandparents homesteaded. And my grandfather was a civil engineer. And so we lived on a gravel pit. And that gravel pit provided a ton of the gravel for the Alyeska pipeline long before I was born. So I grew up with scrapers and drag lines. I mean, I know I look all couture today, but I grew up in a dirt pit, literally. And then my father was a gold miner. And so we had a family gold mine 100 miles south of the Arctic Circle. So I grew up in the dirt there as well. And I thought, man, I really want to get out of the dirt. That did not work out. I am still in the dirt today. I was in the dirt yesterday out in the field. And I thought originally I wanted to be an environmental engineer because I grew up with a great love for Alaska. And I still embody this today. And many of the people I work with in the energy industry and really everywhere, you live and work in the same place. So you have to take care of it. And that was ingrained in me at a very young age. So I thought I wanted to be an environmental engineer. And then my grandfather, the civil engineer, said to me, they don't make any money. Sorry. He said, you should go into petroleum engineering. They make all the money. And I thought, well, that sounds fantastic because I want to get out of the dirt. And so I started looking at schools and I was, you know, great at math and science as a young person. And I thought, well, whatever gets me out of the dirt, and I want to run a company one day because that's just, you know, I had it in my head that the energy industry was like Dallas and that I would be riding around on my horse with my oil fields in the background. That didn't work out either. But I thought, man, isn't that romantic? And that's what I want to do because I'm getting out of Alaska to go ride around on my horse in Texas. And so anyway, Minds and Texas A&M were the top 2 schools back in the 90s. And Minds was #1 at that time. They also offered me a much better scholarship. Thank you, School of Mines. And Colorado seemed more like Alaska. And so I came down to visit the school by myself. What were my parents thinking? I think I raised myself, they said. And I thought the school was beautiful. And I thought it looked a lot like Alaska. And I liked how small it was. I thought I can handle that being from Alaska. And so I came here and it took me 5 years to get my petroleum engineering degree. And I worked in the writing center while I was here. That helped me out. So this is where I think I learned to write as well at Minds. And when I graduated, it was 1998 and oil was $20 a barrel. It was pretty rough out there. And little did I know that this was the beginning of a very tumultuous career that has been both incredibly rewarding, but at the same time painful at times too. And one of my very first jobs was offshore in the Gulf of Mexico for Union Pacific Resources. I was out there with my little hard hat on and my coveralls, just so excited to be a production engineer out there. And then women didn't have quarters. There was no separate place to sleep. And so one of the mechanics said, grab a mattress and drag it into the electronics room because it's air conditioned. You know, it was like 120 degrees offshore in the Gulf. And so I would drag my mattress into the electronics room and it would lock from the inside. So I would sleep in there. And anyway, one of the first jackups that I was on, which was, it was deplorable, but I speak French. And they all speak Cajun. Well, they were very happy to have a young woman offshore. And for 3 days I was out there and I could hear everything they were saying. It was mostly flattering, I have to say. Pretty cute at my young age. And on the last day, I was waiting for the helicopter to come pick me up. And everybody stands and waits while the helicopter lands. And the captain of the jacket was there. And I said, merci beaucoup, ça c'est très bien. And he looked at me and he said, holy beep. And he said, are you going to tell the company we're a contractor? And I said, no, but this isn't the way you should treat women offshore. And they said, well, okay, if you're not going to call it in, what next? I said, well, you've got 10 seconds to get my gear up to the helicopter pad, but this isn't going to go well at all. I don't know what I was thinking in my early 20s. I must have been crazy. And so they ran my gear up to the helicopter, threw it on board. I got on the helicopter and the pilot was this Vietnam vet, great guy. And he was like, never in all my years of flying, I ain't ever seen any shit like that. I was like, they must have just really liked me. I was just really good at my job. I'm a great engineer. I went to school of mines. So we land at the next jackup rig and I get off and there's a company man there named Russell. And little did I know Russell would be my very first mentor ever in my career, in the beginning of my personal board of advisors. And I got off the helicopter and Russell said to me, oh, I heard all about it. They already radioed over. I know exactly what happened on the last rig, and that's not going to happen here. But what he taught me over the next couple of months was to know where my boundaries are at and to really start digging into my core values. And we didn't call it core values back then, but he taught me what matters to you. And if you're going to survive in this industry, and for a lot of women and for a lot of diverse people out there, all industries can be very challenging from technical and industrial perspectives. And you got to know what your boundaries are. And you also got to start building that personal board of advisors. So when you have a tough, challenging moment, you can go to those people and start asking questions. And Russell was the first one who came to me and said, let me help you navigate this. Let me help you get this right so you can have a long career as a woman in the oil field. And it was a blessing. He gave me a great gift very early on, letting me know where to draw my line in the sand. Literally, like, don't cross my line. This is where my boundaries are. And it was a huge start to my career and success. And then after Union Pacific, I went to Schlumberger. I got laid off there. I got laid off there, and then bounced around for a long time. And I thought, well, this bouncing around thing isn't working out so great. And then I went back to University of Denver and I got an MBA because I thought, well, I'm just still an individual contributor, and I want to make that jump. And I know I need finance. What I know I need to do as well is really build that business acumen and have that financial literacy and leadership skills if I want to make that jump. So I went to University of Denver to get those things. I actually came to Mines and asked about getting a PhD in mineral economics. And I will say, after a long conversation like, this isn't for you, you're going to stay in the workforce. So thank you, Mines, for directing me that way. And then after that is really when my career started to take off. So all the bouncing around I had done, I had collected a bunch of skills. And during that time, one of the great skills that I collected, and Chris talked about this, was learning how to explain technical things in plain English. And this happens a lot in every industry. People do not know their game when they just give you technical garbly-goo. If you can't explain it to your grandma, you don't know it. It's very true. So the ability to speak in plain English, which was a great attribute of why the foundation of Mines matters so much. That's one of the things I've noticed of all the engineers I've worked with from all the other universities. Mines engineers can explain things extremely well because they know it from the foundation up. right? And critical thinking here is very, very strong. So I sort of built my career on, I can explain really technical things in plain English. And then I got my MBA. And that's when the business piece came in and the leadership piece came in, and my career really started to take off. I went to Halliburton. I built a business for them, which was a lot of fun. And all my friends were like, oh my God, you're going to Halliburton. And it was great because I got to work with the best companies from all over the world. And I learned a ton just by asking questions and really starting to use that business acumen in that way. And then I ended up getting an offer from Halliburton. Culture there was you don't say no to any offer. That was the kiss of death when I was at Halliburton. And they offered me Kuwait or Abu Dhabi. You think this? No. And so I said, let me go take an international job with another company, and I'll come back once I've got my international chops. And I'd worked international in Venezuela in a previous, which Schlumberger previously, but it was many years before. So they wanted me to run an international business. And I said, well, let me go do this at another company, and then I'll come back. So I went to work for another company over in London and got the international check the box because, as Chris mentioned, there are things that you need to get to the top. And it typically is running a global business at some point. It's running a P&L, a profit and loss center, where you're in control of the budget and delivering on that. That's a key requirement. And supervising a lot of people. Like those are the check the boxes to get to the top. And so I went to an international company, and in 1 year I flew 155,000 miles. I would wake up and not know what country I was in. I would be, just like walking to meetings, and but it was a great experience because I was in Warsaw, I was in Pacific Asia, I was in Argentina, I was all over the place, and it really brought so many concepts together. And then finally, I ended up after that at CNX Resources. I never made it back to Halliburton. CNX is a public company based in Appalachia, and that's really where sort of that third pillar came in. So I've been building my personal board of advisors over the course of years, which is really about collecting people that are mentors, that are advocates, and that are allies, depending on when you need them, and depending on how you can help them sometimes as well. And I knew how to speak in very plain English to explain things. And now at CNX, I picked up the third paradigm that really made me successful. And that was always tying back what I did to the value for the company. And let me tell you, sometimes what you think is valuable is not what the company thinks is valuable. And that is a huge disconnect that you see a lot out of there. And so really at that point, that was sort of the final piece that I needed to get to the C-suite, which I did at CNX. And it was about making sure that everything that we did was tied to whatever the company metric was. When I was at CNX, it's net asset value. Now that I'm at Caris, we're an equity value-based company. So whatever your corporate metric is, always showing here's what I'm doing and how is what I'm doing driving that metric, and that's successful. And it's really about that income statement and balance sheet and getting there. And then when I got to Caris, I'll say I was headhunted to go there. That was one of the few times in my life I was actually headhunted. Normally it's always been somebody I've known or a phone call or something that has gotten me somewhere. And the reason why with headhunters at the executive level, they look for your name to be repeated multiple times and why, for what your brand was. And my brand was that I was great at tying operations to company value, that I could drive value, whatever the metric was. That was the brand associated with me. And also being a very contemporary leader, I'm very new school. And so when Caris came calling, I had a desire to get back to Denver as well. I was living out in Pittsburgh at that point in time and really missed the Rocky Mountains and the culture here and the people. And they said, well, the company's near bankruptcy. This is 2 years ago. And I said, well, we're going to have to really negotiate hard for this one then and value and equity associated with the company. And we made a deal that if I could help turn around the company, that I would be rewarded for that. And in 2 years, we are now the largest natural gas provider in the Western United States. We're a $2 billion company that almost went under 2 years ago. And it's all because of driving value. That one single thing that changed that. So, when I think about Minds and what Minds has given me, fundamentally, yeah, it's a certificate to learn and to learn really fast. That's what you get when you walk out of the door, no matter what your degree is. But I think about really learning how to speak in plain English and to drive that home. And I do think back to the economics courses here, Sturmel's course, which I have sent countless engineers to that course. If you haven't taken it, take it. It is life-changing. I cannot, I've sent so many people to that class as well. That work of connecting to value is in that course. It's in the business school here now. And then really tying it together with that personal board of advisors that's helped me figure out how I want to do this thing. Because I don't have all the answers. I never have half the answers. Everybody else always has the answers. I'm just pulling them together.
Oh, I gotta say a few things here.
Sure, go ahead, Chris.
Okay. First of all, I didn't know you were from Fairbanks, and my senior year in college, I did a National Science Foundation fellowship in Fairbanks. Like that's probably
We probably met.
So we've really known each other for like 30 years.
Yeah, true.
Okay,
True.
so we're done with the 4 weeks or 4 days. It's 30 years. There's something that Andrea's pointed out that I want to really reinforce because it is you obviously learned it like your first year of work, and I didn't learn it. And we talked about this earlier in the week. She's got this thing, and I can't stress the importance of it, her personal board of advisors, right? And I didn't get that. Like this idea of a network, if it's your peers, your friends, your mentors, your sponsors, I didn't get that until much later in my career. And now I got them. I got them all over the place. A lot of times I call them my guys. I got corrected once because now Andrea is one of my girls. But
Women.
women. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Damn it. This idea of this personal board of advisors is really, really, really important. It is pivotal to your career, and you don't really realize it when you're younger. And when we talked about this, I was like, it took me a long time. And so I think that that's probably one of the key points of advice from Andrea that I wish I would have heard 30 years ago when I met her in Fairbanks, that's a key. And I think something else you said that really is good about reflecting upon is this idea of a growth mindset. Like this, I'm going to constantly keep learning, and you touched on that. I think that's really, really important also. So
Back in Fairbanks.
I know, right? In the dirt. The dirt.
A lot of mosquitoes up there in the summertime.
Oh, they're not. They're like-
I have also worked in Fairbanks.
They're like
so-
airplanes. They're not mosquitoes. They're
Yes,
just.
Fairbanks Club.
Oh,
Anyway, thank you so much for sharing your stories. I think this panel doesn't actually need a moderator. I think you two can carry the whole thing. It's going on for quite a while, but there are some folks who submitted questions, and so I thought we could tackle a few of those. We've fielded questions. Many of them are coming from alums. A lot of them relatively younger alums, campuses, as well as from students. Before jumping in, since you kind of opened the door to this one, that I was just wondering, I was fascinated listening to both of you talk about sort of your careers and your journeys and progression. And it's, if I were a young alum or student, I'd be looking at you two going, look, of course they're CEOs and they're leaders of companies. They're just they're amazing, articulate people. And that's not me, right? So, I'd almost feel like there's no hope for me because you two are both, incredibly polished, great at telling your stories and articulate and everything. I'm just wondering if you were like, if your mind self was sitting in the chair today, who would that be versus who you are now?
It
Right,
was not the same person.
Okay.
My mind self wasn't the same person. I was reasonably extroverted, but probably on the line. I'm much more extroverted now, but it was a very different person. And this idea of kind of taking hold of my career and what I wanted to do, and this DIY concept has evolved who I am. I wasn't the same. I don't know if you were the same person. I wasn't the same person. I don't know what my husband would say about that, so we're not going to look at him.
He's rolling his eyes.
He is
back there.
rolling his eyes a little bit. I don't feel like I was the same person. I didn't know how to talk to people, I don't know what you think, but I've evolved greatly since my time at Mines.
Yeah, I would say, I'm relatively the same person. I'm still excessively extroverted. I was one of the few Minds people that was. They've gotten in trouble a couple times in class with that one. And I think it's more about honing the skills that you want, right? So, yeah, I might be a natural speaker, but I've gotten better. And when I prep, we prep like no other. Chris and I did for today. I'm even better than when I'm unprepped, right? So it's that honing of those skills and going and getting that and really utilize, like case in point, when I was at CNX, they brought in a group from MSNBC. It was Tony Fratto, who was Bush's press secretary, who actually worked in the White House with a good friend of mine from childhood, believe it or not. But they brought them in and we did a boot camp on how to pivot and how to control press. Because anytime you get to the top, there's lots of opportunities to speak to the press. You do not want to put your company in any kind of distress whatsoever, especially I was with a public company at the time. And what you say, the SEC really cares about what you say. So your ability to not put your company at risk was key. And I will tell you that experience, it was very painful. They had cameras and we went through this whole thing, learned a ton and got even better about things like public speaking, University of Denver. And I've always been a good speaker. Before my MBA, I was a horrible listener. I was just waiting for my turn to talk. Like you'd be talking about, I wouldn't hear a word you were saying. I was just like, here's all the things that I'm going to say because he's going to be done in just a minute and then I'm going to be able to go and it's going to be just fine, right? Like that whole thing. And actually listening to the other people, that was one of the foundations to making a much better leader and to be more engaged. And then I will say too, like when you do Myers-Briggs, I'm an ENTP, I have pretty low empathy. Empathy is a skill. I learned how to use that. I went and found a coach, a professional coach, to help me work on empathy to be a better leader. And when I meet leaders that I admire, often they're not the super charismatic, boisterous extrovert like myself. They're the more humble, introverted, practical people that are out there. Those are the ones that I really do admire because they have skills I don't have. And those are the people you want to surround yourself with, back to our personal board of advisors, people that are different than you so you can learn from them to be a more humble leader, to be a better listener and continue to hone those skills.
So I'm going to follow on that thread a little bit here. And, both of you have MBAs from the same place. And actually quite a few Minds alums have degrees from that place. You've probably bumped into a few others along the way. And so Adam, who graduated in 2018, has a question about the value and necessity of the MBA. I think maybe Chris, if you could answer this, and I want to put a little twist on it, which is, you can go to get other education, to actually learn something, and sometimes you can go do something just to get a credential, right? And so there is certainly a perception that that the credential is a necessary component to advancing in a career versus necessarily the knowledge that goes along with it. So I was wondering if you wouldn't mind kind of addressing your perspective on that.
So this could be a controversial perspective. A check the box on I've got an MBA from Southern Oklahoma Technology School of Pig Farming is irrelevant. It's the learning that you get during an MBA. And if the question is, do you need an MBA or not? My perspective is that there are certain attributes of a business degree that are very important. Financial acumen, financial literacy, understanding how a business functions, how it makes money, what are the levers inside of a business that make it lose or make money. Financial acumen, financial literacy are absolutely foundational for if you want to move out of a technical discipline into the C-suite or executive level positions. You got to be able to know how the company makes money. As far as whether or not you need an MBA to do that, some companies do have. I have worked in a company that had a check the box. You have to have actually a good MBA to move up in the ranks. And I never really thought that seemed very fair because a lot of the attributes that you need, the financial acumen or strategy, or some of the marketing things that you can learn in an MBA, you can learn. So do I think you need an MBA? No. Do I think you need to learn attributes of an MBA to be successful? Yes, you do. If I think about my advice about getting an MBA, my unsolicited advice would be, if you think you want to get an MBA, don't do it right out of school. Take the time to understand, go work for a company and understand how a company functions, right? Otherwise, you're getting a degree in something and it's very difficult to apply back to reality of a business. So go work in a company, learn everything you possibly can. You know, develop that growth mindset to talk to lots of different people and learn. The other thing is, if you think you want to get an MBA, with a Minds education, you are very well credentialed to get a good MBA. So take the time and look around and do your research and do the things you learned at Minds to go to a really good school, because you can, you know, you don't want to go to, you know, a one-year program that really is a check the box, because there is so much you can learn in a program that go to a good program. Take the time, make a good decision. And then the other thing that I've thought about is, during your MBA program, there's going to be something that you like when you're doing it. There's going to be something you're like, I like that better than that. Then maybe take more classes, or do more research on your own, or do some reading in whatever particular area that you like. For some reason, I really liked this concept of like data-driven marketing strategies and growth strategies that you would do during your business plan development. I loved it because to me, it was like some sort of story. Like, how do you take this idea and turn it into a financial model in a business? It was like combining the math and the problem solving into a business. I absolutely loved it. I bolted on all different things throughout my career to do that more and more. And I've got this really strong kind of all these different facets of marketing because I loved it. So just when you think about an MBA, pick a good school if it's what you want to do. Study the thing that you like. Don't just do it because somebody says to do it. Do it because you know, in-depth areas that you like. But I do not believe it's an imperative for success, but some of the attributes, specifically financial acumen and financial literacy, are absolutely required to move up in a company, period. You got to know how the business functions and makes money. I don't know, Andrea, what do you think?
Yeah, I would largely agree with that. You know, I also think that there is an opportunity to get some of those skills early on in undergrad, especially given the business program at Minds now. I wish that would have been here when I would have been here. I would have been drawn to it. And I will tell you, back to what I said earlier, every engineer that I've worked with at most of the companies that have been a part of the organizations that I've been a part of, we have sat through Sterl's class. It's just necessary how to do evaluation. You have to know how to calculate NPV and IRR. Also add from an MBA from today and really the business world today, and this is a skill set that's necessary, is ESG, environmental, social, and governance. It is a paramount requirement of everything that is happening in North America today and Western Europe. And I'll even add, your understanding around corporate social responsibility is key to really purpose-driven businesses that are out there. And so those two pieces on top of the financial literacy and the financial acumen is key. Whether that happens in an MBA, you know, there's environmental classes at here. I would encourage everybody to take some environmental classes in their undergrad. It is paramount to understanding how the world works in this day and age. Absolutely.
And I'll just echo that we hear that a lot from employers and leaders of companies who come to recruit at Minds, that you really need this contextual picture of what you're doing. And that's where a lot of these topics fit in. And so we have been expanding programs in those areas. Now, both of you spoke incredibly passionately about your careers and all the things that you've pursued. And I've got complete sense that both of you just love what you do. Most days, yeah. I think we can all see that at some point. But you know, we have a question from Patrick, who graduated in 2017, and it was phrased as sort of, how does one follow happiness versus money, and the best ways of making that distinction. And Andrea, I was wondering if you could share your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I believe in work-life juggling. Like sometimes you're all work. Like I was saying, this week has been a little rough for me. It's budget season. We just finished a board meeting a week ago. I've been in 2 different states in 2 different days before today, and battling a little bit of a stomach thing on top of it. I mean, it's just, you do. Has this been a joyous week? Heck no, until now. So the other thing I will say about all Minds grads that I know, Catherine Smith is here today. She's one of the mentees that I work with. Incredible woman. We talk about this a lot. The money will come. The money just comes when you're in the right place, doing the right thing. And yeah, I totally agree. You should fight hard, negotiate hard for yourself and do that. But if those things line up, the money just starts showing up and it just starts rolling in, and then it gets exponential real quick, especially if you have some of these skills that we talked about, showing your value to a company, connecting what you do to value, the money easily comes. Years ago, when I was at CNX Resources, it was a downturn. It was 2015. Things were really rough. And I was like, oh my gosh, another layoff is coming in my life. Like, how many of these do I have to go through? You know, the wild roller coaster of energy. And those things can get you down. And, you know, the business was in a crunch. It was a grind. We were trying really hard to survive bankruptcy again in a public company. And I had a coach at that time, Dr. Michael McAbee. He's a psychologist from Harvard, great coach. He wrote this book about narcissist leaders. I may have been working for a narcissist at that point in time and struggling big time because our values did not align. It's a big part of it, knowing your core values, making sure that those values align. And I was working with Dr. Michael McAbee, and he said, you know, we were working on core values, and one of my core values is fun. I love having fun. Oh, it's so true.
I've got the same.
Fun.
My leadership credo, number one, gotta have fun.
Gotta have fun.
Gotta have fun.
It's not very fun when you're in a company that's about to go bankrupt and, you know, gas was, I don't know, under $2 again, even though today we're over $5. So rough times there. And what he taught me is you can bring the things you love to work. One of the things I love to do is I love to dine with people. I think we're solving the world's problems, especially when a bottle of wine is involved. I can solve world peace, world hunger, you name it, it's happening, we're solving it. But I love that camaraderie of breaking bread together. And he said, why don't you bring that to work? And it was like, yeah, why don't I bring that to work? So we started having these lunches, and somebody would bring like lunch for the team. And then we started doing breakfast, you know, and we weren't spending any money on it. We would, you know, I had a thing, if you showed up 5 minutes late to a meeting, it was $5. It's like a flat fee. So I started, you know, building the kitty that way to pay for some things. And so it's about bringing the things that bring you joy in your life and bringing them to work. And certainly when you're in a leadership position, that's much easier to do. And one of the things at Karis that everybody knows about me is I do like to have fun. And there are a lot of fun events that occur and team building events that occur around fun. There's a lot of eating together. I mean, I just had all of my direct reports at my house with their spouses, and we're all vaccinated. So we were all together and we were breaking bread and enjoying a nice meal together, and their spouses were there, and it was a lot of fun. So I think when you think about happiness versus the dollars, and our millennial friends are great at this, about defining your core values and what matters to you and making sure that those align with your company, but also figuring out little ways to bring those to work so that you can have joyous moments. I don't think work is fun all the time. It can be. Sometimes things are hard, you know, and you have to get through those days, but just finding little moments to bring those the things that make you happy to your job is key. And then when you're the boss, you can just make it whatever you want to be. So, right, Chris? You know that.
Yeah, we have fun. We do have fun.
So we have maybe 3 minutes left. I'm looking at timekeepers
Time
to
flies.
see. Yep, there. Yep. So I thought I kind of got 2 questions for you. We're wrapping up. One of them is for both of you. You've given a lot of professional advice through telling your stories and answering some of the questions. Wondering if you had advice, you know, going back to your mind self in a way, and if you have advice for students who are here at Minds today about how to best use their time at Minds. And then the follow-on question, so you can be thinking about this came up when we were in the green room, but I
Is it
know
about shoes?
I wasn't good. It wasn't going to be about shoes unless we had extra time, but yeah, we did cover shoes. But this another thing we covered, which both of you sort of let slip, was you both have a mantra, or right that sort of came up, and so well, why don't we do the sort of advice for students? Your sort of, I guess, 30 seconds of advice for students who are here at Minds today, and then we'll do the mantras before we wrap up.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Preempt.
Spend more time at the ACE. No, definitely spend more time skiing. I wish I would have done more skiing. This is a great chance to explore options. So go try the business class, even if you're not sure. Like Chris said, it might spark your interest and it might be exciting. Or take that environmental class that wasn't a part of your core curriculum, because this is the chance to get to experiment a little bit. start your personal board of advisors now. All of the alumni out there, get into the mentorship program and pay it forward. I cannot tell you, it's brought me great joy to be a part of the mentorship program. Chris, I totally expect you to sign up for this. Get involved in the Women of Minds, in the interest
On
groups.
camera.
In the
I'm
alumni.
supposed to say yes,
I'm on it.
And get involved in those groups when you're an undergrad. The mentorship program is there for you. It's a chance for you to start building that with advisors. And then I'll just say, my mantra is anything worth doing is worth overdoing. So
We'll see your mine in a second. I would say the exact same thing. While you're at school, you have so much opportunity to learn. Your brain is learning, it wants to learn, it's open to learn. Take every opportunity to learn. You know, you want to get a good grade point average, but in 10 years, it's irrelevant what your grade point average was. The idea of learning and a growth mindset and for your whole life being able to just continuously learn is my advice for mine. Just take every opportunity to learn something new. Yours is, what was your mantra again?
anything worth doing is worth overdoing.
Yeah, mine is speed beats perfection. So it's all about like, get it done, move on. And I think that just is to do with the nature of where I am right now in private equity, like get it done, move on, fast fail, you know, so a little bit different.
Love it.
It works for homework assignments of mine too. by the way. Particularly this time of the semester. Well, we've reached time. We could go on for probably a couple hours listening to you two. You're amazing. You're fascinating. I feel lucky just to be in the middle here. I think it's hopefully, I suspect a lot in the audience, folks in the audience have been inspired by what you both have said. And I think like they went to Mines, I'm going to Mines, or I went to Mines. Maybe I can do that. Maybe I can do that too. But the great takeaways, I think, find a mentoring network is an amazing thing to do. Consider, just keep growing through your career. Look for, be proactive in looking for those opportunities. Keep learning. Those are all, I think, great lessons for the audience. So thank you very much for that. And why don't we thank our two amazing